Hello and welcome to Dice and Demons. I'm Emma, and in this video I'm going to show you the worst possible color scheme I have ever painted on a Space Marine. And the reason behind that is I had a giveaway here on this channel where I asked the people who wanted to win the models that I was giving away for their most atrocious color scheme idea ever. And then I picked which one I thought sounded the worst, and I tried painting that up, and that is what I'm going to show you here in this video. And I have to warn you, it doesn't look great. It actually really doesn't look great. It's bad. It's bad. So, but I'm going to show you here in the video what it looked like and how I painted it, and then at the end of the video, of course, you get to see what it looked like when it was done. And I don't think I would recommend anyone to actually follow this as a tutorial, but perhaps it can serve as a sort of warning. This is how not to paint a model, perhaps. It was fun though, so I hope you'll enjoy watching along. I start off as I usually do with a model that's been primed using the White Scars primer, and this is a Space Marine from the Leviathan box that Games Workshop sent to me. It's from the Infernus Squad. And the task that was given to me for this horrendous paint job was that the armor was going to be a 50-50 split between turquoise and bright green. So I thought that the Croxagore Scales contrast paint would be a nice starting off point for that. I wanted to enhance the sort of 50-50 split look a little bit, so I decided to go with turquoise on the left side for the lower half and then on the right side for the torso, just to make it look a little bit more visually interesting. Not that it ended up being necessary. It looks plenty interesting as it is, but I thought it would be like a little bit of fun and make it look slightly more like, you know, a medieval knight or something. Then for the bright green, I chose to go with striking scorpion green, which is also a contrast paint. It's one of those very, very bright contrast paints that I usually love, and at this stage of the painting process I still love it, but trust me, it doesn't really look great at the end. Then I thought that I wanted to make sure I had some shadows and some highlights, and so I went with Warp Lightning Green, which is also contrast paint, and I used that in, as you can see, sort of a cross-hatching technique to add some shadows to the green. I used the exact same technique on the turquoise, only here I used Achillean green, also a contrast paint, for the shadowy cross-hatching. And as you can see, these are some very fine lines, and as this is going to be an atrocious paint job, I could just have, you know, smeared the paint on really thick, but I thought I would actually make, you know, give the color scheme a fair chance by trying to paint it as neatly as I could. Then I painted all the metallic parts using Iron Hand Steel, but that is not how it will end up looking, because as you can see here, unfortunately the footage is a little bit blurry, but I'm adding a red wash over it. This is Dark Angels Red, also a contrast paint, because the description I was given was that the metallics had to be red metallics. Yeah. Then to add some highlights to the bright green parts of the armor, I used Quantum Green from Huge Miniatures, and this is a fluorescent paint, and I love the fluorescent paints from Huge Miniatures, and I also have an affiliate link with a discount code if you want to get 5% off if you also want some really cool fluorescent paints, so I'll leave a link to that in the show notes. And as you can see, I do the exact same thing with the cross-hatching. I find that cross-hatching is a nice way of adding some texture and some visual interest to a model, and also getting the idea of shadows and highlights without having to do a ton of really smooth blends, which I find is a little bit of a pain to do, honestly. The final layer of highlight for the green armor was with Starfire Yellow, which is a bright neon yellow, and that is also from Huge Miniatures. I also really wanted to have some fluorescent highlights for the turquoise armor, but I didn't have any fluorescent turquoise paints, so I decided to just mix them up on my own. And I'm sorry you get here a look at my very messy wet palette, but I hope you'll live. So I mixed it with Blaster Blue and then a color called Gamma Green, and I just mixed these two and thought that that would probably turn out to be a pretty decent turquoise color. So I applied that the same way that I applied the green and the neon yellow to the green parts of the armor, and I was actually fairly happy with this really quick quick paint that I just mixed up. And the reason I wanted it to be fluorescent is because I really like when my models light up under a UV light, as you'll get to see at the end of the video, and I just thought it would look nice if both parts of the armor would light up and not just the green. I know it's a very silly reason, because I do have other decent turquoise paints that I could just have used, but this was, yeah, I just thought it was fun. And after all, this is a very fun model to paint, just because I'm not trying to make it look as good as it possibly can. So yeah, there you go. For the last layer of highlights, I just mixed in a little bit of white with the original turquoise color I had mixed up, and I think it worked really well. Then we get to the next part of the painting process, and I was asked to put on a chunky bright orange edge highlight. So I thought chunky could mean a couple of things, but as I said, I wanted to try and paint this relatively neatly to give the color scheme a sort of fair chance to stand out on its own. So I just applied the orange in a little bit more of broader strokes than I usually would do. I usually try to keep my edge highlights relatively thin, but as you can see here, I really try to flesh it out to make sure that you can definitely tell it's there. The orange color here is also from Huge Miniatures, and it's called Laser Orange, and it's much more vibrant in real life than you can see here. Then the next part of the task was to highlight that with pink, and I did that using a color called Cyber Pink, also from Huge Miniatures. And at this stage, as you can see, it starts to look very messy and very confusing and not great at all. And the worse it got, the more fun I was actually having. And now we get to the weapon. I was asked to paint the weapon brown, and I think this combined with the very bright colors that were chosen, like turquoise, bright green, orange and pink, combined with red metallics and a brown weapon, it just sounded horrible to me, and so I decided to paint it in a very desaturated brown color, and this one is called Scorched Earth. It's from the Duncan Rhodes paint set, and I chose that because I thought that a desaturated brown would probably look the worst next to all these very riotous bright neon colors. I then started to highlight the weapon, and the cool thing about the paints from Duncan Rhodes is that they come in sort of a triad, so you have the darker tone, the mid-tone, and the highlight color, and so I thought it would be nice to stay within the same sort of color saturation. And this one is called Ancient Forest, and as you can see, I tried to do a relatively fine edge highlight and then just add a little bit of texture in the middle, just to give it a bit of visual interest. Then for the third layer of highlight, I used Wasteland Brown, also from Duncan Rhodes, and I thought that was going to be the last layer of highlights, but I ended up not really being satisfied with it because of all these neon colors, and even though I had then highlighted this weapon with two colors, it just looked like a big blob of uniform brown. So I ended up mixing in a little bit of Wraithbone from Citadel with the Wasteland Brown and giving it a final layer of highlight, just to make sure that it, well, I wouldn't say pop, I mean it's a brown weapon, but you get the idea. I wasn't completely happy with the red metallics, so I decided to go back over it with the Iron Hand Steel. I think the Dark Angels red contrast paint was simply a little bit too had too much pigment in it, so it more or less just looks like a dark red, and you can't really tell that it's supposed to be red metallic. So I decided to redo it a little bit, while at the same time still keeping the darker color underneath, because I thought that would be a nice way of adding a little bit of shadows and highlights to it. And finally, to make sure that you could still tell it was supposed to be red metallics, I gave it a quick red wash from Huge Miniatures. Their wash is less pigmented than, for instance, the contrast paints. So I think it ended up looking pretty good. I mean, relatively speaking, of course. Then to tidy up everything, I went over it with a black contrast paint. This one is called Black Legion, just to make sure that sort of every single armor panel stands out on its own, because as you can probably tell, this is well, these colors make it look really messy, and so I thought that that just tidying up with a little bit of black outline would probably help a little bit, even though I don't think anything can really honestly save this paint job at this stage. For the eyes, I wasn't given any direction, so I thought what would look, well, good, bad, I don't know. So in the end I went for purple because that was one of the colors that I actually hadn't used, and I also had a fluorescent purple color, and so I thought that would work out really well. This is ultraviolet, also from Huge Miniatures. And here you can see the finished product. I don't really know what to call it. It looks atrocious, which was, as I said, the whole idea, so thank you so much to the person who wrote this in. I'll get in touch with you. But I mean, it doesn't look great at all. I can see that the brown weapon, the red metallics, the neon colors, it's awful. And I can honestly say, I don't think I've had so much fun painting a project in ages. Also, of course, there is the added benefit, as I said, with the fluorescent paints, that they glow under UV light, and that always just makes me happy, even though it has no practical use whatsoever. But I mean, making you happy when you know that your model can do that, I guess that is also always something, right? And as I said, I don't think I've had this much fun painting a model in a long time, and I think it was actually a kind of a creative, liberating experience that I went into this painting process knowing that it was not going to look great at the end of it, and so I felt like a lot of freedom. I could do whatever, and it would probably still end up looking bad, which was the whole idea, the whole fun experiment. And so I could just, I didn't feel any sort of anxiety, anything like, oh, I really want to make this look cool and I need this for an army or any sort of thing. This was just fun. This was just pure creative fun, and I really encourage you guys, if you feel any slight inclination, to try this out yourself. It was just, yeah, as I said, very fun, and you are more than welcome to use this color scheme or any of the other color schemes that was suggested on the original video. I'll leave a link to that so you can find inspiration there, or I'm sure that other people somewhere around on the great internet will be more than happy to provide you with ideas for this, because, I mean, who doesn't want to think up the worst imaginable color scheme? And before I end this video, I want to thank the wonderful people who support this channel on Patreon. I really appreciate it, guys. So thank you to Thomas Masson, to Gwen L, to Scott Broadway, Andre Correa, Anthony Polcastro, Queen's Wolf, TJ Kubiak, Mando Project, Starcoin85, Esbir, Echinocicus, and Firelord21. As I said in the beginning of the video, I will leave a link to the Patreon in the show notes, and I would greatly appreciate your support if you have the means and inclinations to do so. Also remember, you can follow me over on Twitter and Instagram as Dyson Demons if you want to stay up to date on my painting projects. So let me know in the comments, what did you think of this painting project? What did you think of this challenge? And do you have any plans to try and do this yourself? Please let me know. I think that would be awesome and very fun. So again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.